Today I'm going to be busting 40 of the biggest DayZ myths that you guys kindly left in the comments of my last video. From explosive presents to figuring out whatever the hell this is to even one-way flashbangs. You're not going to want to miss this one. So without wasting any more time, let's put our science gear on and test your myths. A player can jump on top of a grenade, protecting their teammates. I first tested with no player and the results were as expected. I then laid on top of the grenade and to my surprise, the player absorbed enough of the explosion to protect the surrounding players. So this myth is true. I also heard that you can perform a similar trick by placing a plate carrier on top of the grenade instead. And this seemed to work even better. I tried to test again with different objects, but it only seemed to work out of objects made from stronger materials such as a plate carrier and in this example a cooking pot. You can unpin a flashbang, attach it to your vest, blinding the opponent but not yourself. Interestingly, the first time I tested this it actually worked, although after testing it again and again and again it just kept on blinding me. But I wasn't going to bust this myth without finding a reliable way to replicate it. I first tested each vest slot but this had no effect, until I cracked it. If you were moving forward it wouldn't blind you. I assumed that this was due to some sort of desync between the character and the grenade, and as far as the game was concerned the grenade was exploded behind you. This had me worried that it wouldn't actually blind any opponents opposite you, but after replicating this in a realistic scenario it worked just fine, confirming this myth. The next myth is that if you max out the precision soft skill represented by this sewing needle you can repair items to pristine. So after repairing some t-shirts we can see that our speciality level is lowering into the negatives and closer to the needle side. After maxing it out with the debug tools we can't actually repair any war items to pristine, although I was still interested to see what this actually did. I repaired 3 different t-shirts on max precision skill, no skill and then max rough skill to compare the differences. What I found was no matter your skill level it always used up 25% of a sewing kit, so no difference. It would also always repair a t-shirt from 1 HP to 25 HP no matter your skill level. But what I did find was the speed it took to repair items was quicker the further you developed your precision skill. It's important to note that developing your rough skill did not make repairing any slower. So no, you can't repair items to pristine, nor can you repair ruined items with the skills maxed out. However, it will affect how quickly you repair an item. On the other hand, maxing out the rough skill apparently provides more logs when cutting down a tree. As we can see, cutting down a tree does increase our rough soft skill. However, I only got 3 logs from these trees without my skill maxed out, and another 3 logs from the next tree with my skills maxed out. Although, as expected, it was noticeably quicker. So, it's safe to say that the soft skill only affects how quickly you can perform certain animations. However, having said all this, both the rough and precision soft skills will be removed in the 1.26 update, which is a shame as it would be a really cool system if expanded upon. Our next myth is that you can ricochet bullets to kill someone. I'll first admit that it's extremely difficult to get a bullet to ricochet with higher caliber weapons, so after swapping to a lower caliber, I had more success, managing to land a shot on the player's arm dealing a measly 2.8 hit points of damage, whereas a similar shot without ricocheting did 4.2 damage. Keep in mind, these are arm shots, that's why the damages are so low. You can expect a torso shot to do 10 times the amount of damage, assuming there's no armor involved. What we can conclude is that the ricocheted bullet did about 33% less damage, although I'd need to do further tests on more weapons to confirm this. However, this does confirm the myth. With enough ricochets or against a player on low enough health, you can deal damage, so we'll be able to kill them. But I'd be surprised if anyone actually managed to pull this off. The next myth is as old as DayZ itself, that each pack of wolves has an alpha, and once slain, the rest of the pack will flee. And funnily enough, while I was making this video, me and an old friend of mine ran into a pack of wolves in DayZ and he had this to say.
I was trying to do a myth busting video on this. You only need to kill 3, and then the other 2 run away.
I thought you had to kill the alpha.
No, that's the myth. There isn't an alpha.
There is?
No, there isn't.
There is the one that's a different colour.
Yeah, there's 5 all the same colour, so which one's the alpha? Well, there's 1 dead. There's 2 dead. Right, kill that one and then... And then the others are going to run off.
Yeah, running off.
And just to confirm, I was, well, unlucky enough to get attacked again.
Well, I've killed 3, so they should all run away now. Yeah.
So, that's this myth busted. Wolves don't have an alpha. As for the different colours, it's entirely random. We had 5 grey wolves in the first pack and 2 white wolves and 3 grey wolves in the second pack, although I can see how a pack with 1 white wolf and that being the 3rd wolf killed could have birthed this myth. The next myth is that you can hold a plate carrier as a shield, and after handing my test subject a plate carrier and wishing him luck, he was relieved to find out this was actually true, and surprisingly even after the plate carrier was ruined. However, this will only work on low caliber weapons. An AKM and the DMR was able to penetrate a so-called shield. So while the myth is true to some degree, you'll probably always be better off just wearing the plate carrier. A similar myth is that a car wheel is bulletproof even when ruined, but as expected it was the same result as the plate carrier, only protecting the player against smaller calibers. But what I do keep hearing a lot is that the tactical backpacks are bulletproof. I decided to use .22 to give this the best chance of working, but it didn't even deflect that, although interestingly, after shooting a player with and without holding a backpack, the player holding the bag actually received 25% less damage, and this even applied to higher calibers receiving 10% less damage. So while it's not bulletproof as such, it is reducing damage, though keep in mind this only applies to the character when holding the backpack. The same damage will be dealt whether the player is wearing the backpack or not. I believe that these actually used to be bulletproof but were updated in a previous patch. The next myth is that wearing a headlight will protect you from dying instantly from a headshot. Now I've made an entire video dedicated to DayZ armor and I recommend you watch it, but first let's get to the bottom of this myth. I've delved into the code. I know that the headlight provides no armor protection, you can even see the bullets passing straight through it, but what surprised me was the player instantly died when not wearing a headlight, however only fell unconscious when they were. This initially confused me, but there's actually two ways to die from a headshot in DayZ, either to the head or to the brain, and a brain shot always instantly kills you. What I figured was that the headlight was deflecting the bullet slightly so that it missed the brain, and to confirm this, a player shot in the side of their face received the same damage to a player who was shot in the centre of the headlight. So yes, this myth is kind of true. A headlight might just save your life, although I wouldn't count on it. Our next myth is that only 9% of you are subscribed, so if you have learned something new, please consider subscribing. We're so close to my goal of 100k by the end of the year. Our next myth is that attaching pouches and a holster reduces the damage to the plate carrier. After shooting just a plate carrier with an AKM, we can see that it does 27 hit points of damage, but after shooting a plate carrier with pouches, some of the damage is transferred from the vest and onto the pouches, only dealing 24.5 damage to the plate carrier. So in certain situations, having pouches attached will make the plate carrier last longer and may save you from an extra bullet. In my last video, we discovered that you could eat raw food if you ate a vitamin just before, and apparently you can do the same with guts. And well, there's only really one way to test this, and to my surprise, it actually worked. I even heard that you could do the same with gasoline, and weirdly, gasoline seems to make your food go up, but it wasn't long until my character was sick. So yes, you can eat guts if combined with a vitamin, but you can't drink gasoline. The next myth is one that I just can't seem to shake. In the last video, we busted the myth that you could shoot grenades on vests to make them explode, but you guys were certain that you'd experienced this firsthand. So in the 1.25 current version of DayZ, we're going to test every other possible grenade to see if we can get to the bottom of what's exploding. I first tested 40mm high explosive grenades, and I shot this thing so many times, but it would just not explode. However, it did explode if it was on the dead player's body. It would also explode if a player was shot and the item became ruined in their inventory, which from afar could be misunderstood as shooting a grenade off their vest. Next we tested flashbangs, but a flashbang would not explode on the vest or in a player's inventory. The same can be said for smoke grenades, which actually just despawn when they become ruined, even if they're on the ground. I then tested landmines, which would explode on the player if they became ruined in the player's inventory. I then tested gas grenades, but this did not explode on either the vest or in the player's inventory. However, while the 40mm gas grenade would not explode on a player's vest, it would explode in their inventory. So, to conclude the grenade myth, grenades will not explode if shot on their vest or in the player's inventory. 40mm high explosives will not explode on the vest but will in the player's inventory. Flashbangs and smoke grenades will not explode on either the vest or in the inventory. A landmine will explode in the inventory if it becomes ruined, and a gas grenade will not explode. However, the 40mm gas grenade will explode in a player's inventory. This means that when travelling with gas grenades, 40mm high explosives and landmines, you should always keep them within containers or attached to vests in the case of the 40mm. Our next myth is that you can shoot the optics on your opponent's weapon to ruin it. As seen, this is entirely possible and makes it basically unusable. So apparently, shoes damage quicker on tarmac than grass. To test this, I ran one full stamina bar on concrete where the shoe received 0.45 damage, and then with a fresh pair of shoes, I ran another full stamina bar on grass where the shoe only received 0.08 damage, a noticeable difference. So yes, it is true, and if you want your shoes to last longer, try running it alongside the road rather than on it. Our next myth is that you can jog quicker without a rifle in your hand. So I raced the same section of track with and without a rifle, and to my surprise I finished a little bit sooner without a rifle, only a few seconds, but this would add up over a larger distance. Keep in mind that this is jogging and not sprinting, but next time you find yourself jogging, consider taking your weapon out of your hands, although this does leave you rather exposed. A similar myth is that you can jump higher with a weapon in your hand. To test this, I found the highest you could jump without a weapon was 0.8375 meters, and this was incredibly hard, although after switching to a weapon, I was able to make this jump a lot more consistently. The highest I could jump with a weapon in my hand was 0.85 meters, and I was unable to make this jump without a weapon in my hand. This means that you could jump 1.25 centimeters higher with a weapon in your hand, so technically the myth is true, but the difference is hardly noticeable. So in the last video, we discovered that you could throw meat to distract wolves, and some of you claimed you could do the same with bones. And you were correct. I guess it kinda does make sense, and apparently you can even do the same with dog food, although I tried both the uncanned and canned version and it had no effect. So currently you can only distract wolves with meat and bones. Some players claim that a wolf would even be more attracted to you if you had raw meat on you, so I spawned a wolf equal distance from one player with no meat and another full of meat, and every time it would choose the player without meat, even when I moved the player with meat closer. Now, this doesn't prove that it prefers players without meat, but it does bust the myth that they prefer players with meat. The next myth is that you can use gas canisters to raid. After shooting a gas canister next to a wall, it did 265 damage, although a wooden panel has 16,000 health points. So, you'd need about 58 gas canisters to destroy one, but it is possible. Now apparently, you can wear a welding mask and not get blinded by flashbangs, and while this would be a cool feature, this myth is sadly not true. I tested this with a shotgun at last video, but this comment reckoned a crossbow on your back would protect you from bullets. But as you can see, there's no collision on the crossbow. I even tested if shooting through it would reduce damage, but there was no difference. This myth is busted. So I heard that there's a chance a zombie can hit you and cause a gas canister in your inventory to explode, and there's only really one way to test this. There we go, this myth is actually true, so just be careful when you're carrying around gas canisters. And no, before you ask, this does not work with grenades. The next myth is that a bear will never deal a death blow, and what I found is that in most tests, the bear would just run away from the unconscious player, but if it did happen to attack, the actual attack of a bear is too high to hit an unconscious player. Having said this, sometimes a bear would deal a double headshot on the first attack, causing you to instantly die, and potentially assume that the bear has dealt a death blow. However, I can say that this myth is true. If you do fall unconscious, the bear won't come back to finish you off. But do keep in mind you can still die from external factors such as bleeding. The next myth is one I have to apologise for. In the last video, I fished for over half an hour without bait and declared that it was impossible to catch a fish without bait. However, you guys were certain that this wasn't true, so this time I was going to attempt the test again with a mod to shorten the cast time, and on my 108th attempt I did actually catch a fish, so this myth is true, although I'd assume you'd likely die of starvation before you actually caught anything. You guys suggested that I should try putting a canister of gasoline into a fire barrel to see if it would explode, much like how grenades explode in a fire. But sadly, the gasoline canister did nothing more than despawn, so the myth of exploding gasoline canisters is false. However, the smaller blue gas canisters definitely do explode. Apparently, a wolf will eat an animal if they come across its corpse. So I killed a deer, and later I actually found a wolf eating it, so this myth is true, and I think it's pretty cool that the environment interacts with each other like this. So someone told me that if you boil dried food it will rehydrate it, so I stuck both dried meat and fruit into a cooking pot, but as expected it did nothing more than burn the food, so this myth is busted. The next myth is that a Humvee will protect players from explosives, and it makes sense, it is bulletproof to some degree, but a grenade still did 45 damage, whereas a grenade to a player in a hatchback did 50 damage. Little difference, and probably had more to do with the placements of the grenades than the vehicles, so while it does offer some protection, it's no different to any other vehicle. Our next myth is that you can wrap up a live grenade, causing it to explode once opened, and it's basically nearly impossible to wrap up a grenade before it explodes. So after using admin tools to perform the action quicker, we can see it still explodes even when wrapped up. I tried the same with landmines both live, which you couldn't even wrap up, and then unarmed, which didn't explode when unwrapped. So unfortunately this myth is busted. It would be a cool feature, but I guess it does kind of ruin the Christmas spirit. Our next myth is that you can control zombies with a Mark 11 because the impacts are louder than the gunshots, and honestly it's a bit wonky, but it does kind of work. And our final myth is that you can perform an exploding punch with a badly damaged gas canister. And well, it does work, but it's going to knock the both of you out. Unless you're wearing the best possible explosive protection, which I discussed in my armor video, and then it's only just barely possible. And that's it for today's video. I really hope that you learned something new, and if you have any more myths of your own, please let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy this one.